Shut that seal. If it vents again, we lose everything from Junction Corridor 6 to the aft cryobank. Commander Argon Vos didn't wait for acknowledgement. His breath coiled visibly in the freezing air, forming brittle strands that snapped apart as he turned sharply on his boots. The deck underfoot moaned, a warping vibration in the alloy plates beneath his stride. No alarms blared, no commands echoed, only the ragged scuff of movement. And still, they hadn't fixed the reactor bleed. The Talvarin was bleeding out. 6 hours ago, it had been a functioning scientific cruiser, manned by 18 of Zelthari's most decorated research personnel. Now only 7 remained. Systems offline. Power decaying cell by cell. No propulsion, no primary life support. Secondary filtration hung by jury-rigged coolant splices, their thermal regulators dying one cycle at a time. Argon ducked through the decontamination arch, steam rolling from the vents like a strangled exhale. Inside the chamber, illumination flickered low. Burnt cyan strips that failed to reach the curved ceiling, leaving outlines trembling against the frost-slick walls. 2 technicians huddled near the environmental core. Neither looked up. "Any response?" Vos asked, voice scraped raw from dehydration. Third Officer Urek, once a data systems expert, just shook his head without turning. "No return ping. The relay tower isn't damaged. The signal's leaving. Nothing's coming back." The commander let the words settle, but only for a moment. Then stopped wasting power broadcasting to a graveyard. Urek shut the console, the gesture numb. Argon moved past him, further into the operations bay. He halted before a containment vault set low into the rear bulkhead. The reinforced glass panel was cracked, a hairline fracture from the initial impact, but it held. Behind it, nestled within a coil of thermal shielding and magnetic suspension bands, the object pulsed. Not in light, not in motion, in something else. Frequency, the artifact, harmonic resonance chamber. They still didn't understand it. Argon stared at it, the way one might stare at a shark's jaw unearthed in a desert. Impossible, ancient, indifferent to the hands that found it. "You think it caused this?" Urek's voice again. He'd followed, now standing behind the commander, with arms folded tight over his ribs, teeth chattering between words. Vos didn't answer. The chamber had always been temperature neutral, until last night. The panel sensors had spiked, and shortly after, drive control ruptured. Spontaneous software reroutes jammed the venting ports and looped the coolant until it burst the primary conduits. Not failure, tampering. But who would have known how? And why here? In a starless region, the navigation maps listed only as grid null. "I need a full diagnostic run on all internal systems. If there's code spliced into the primary control paths, I want the source node traced." "Commander, we're at 17% energy. That includes core reserves." "Use it." Urek hesitated but moved, muttering as he returned to the console. Vos watched his silhouette bathed in flickering glow. Even the machines were dying in stages. The overhead display units displayed their menus in fragmented data shards now, each blinking square showing corrupted glyphs like ancient language colliding with code. He turned away, crossed the deck, entered the corridor. His footfalls tracked fine mist with them, condensation freezing midair as he passed through what used to be the nerve of the ship. Now every junction he moved through had its own particular death. He counted them, lights failing in long delays, access pads that sparked when touched, the smell of thawed polymer sealants leaking from wall conduits. 3 levels down, he found Dran, communications officer, sitting on the floor with his back against a dead bulkhead. "You stopped sending?" Dran nodded once, lips cracked, eyes unfocused. 2 hours ago. Vos knelt, knees pressing against frigid metal. "Why?" "No one's listening." He didn't whisper it, didn't sigh, just said it, a flat line. "We don't broadcast for them." Vos' voice was low, controlled. "We broadcast because that's protocol." Dran closed his eyes. "You're still clinging to protocol?" "No," Vos said. "I'm clinging to order. There's a difference." They didn't speak again. The commander stood, not bothering to tell Dran to get up. He wouldn't. Further aft in the core operations archive, the last functioning uplink console buzzed low with residual static. Voss activated the heads-up display. Green cascading text bled onto the curved interface. A dozen blank recording tiles waited. Log entry: Commander Argon Vos, Zelthari Science Vessel Talvarin. Cycle 3709. Galactic Standard. He paused, staring at the words forming in real time across the display glass. We've lost all main propulsion. Aft reactor caged. Power reserves critical. Estimated breathable atmosphere: 16 hours at current use. Estimated thermal stability: 8.0. His jaw tensed. We have discovered an artifact in subspace range. Coordinates attached. It emits harmonics inconsistent with known particle behaviors. Based on current data, it could be a reactor core of unknown origin, or something beyond existing power classifications. He leaned forward, hands braced on the console. We suspect sabotage. Systems failure was not random. Code overwrites were targeted, subtle, effective. Suggest internal compromise or pre-installed trigger buried in prior updates. Mission logs have been encoded and locked. If found, the object must not be returned to Dominion science authorities until independent verification is possible. The display trembled slightly. Cold affected the housing now. We were left here. Left, not lost. The word tasted like betrayal. Voss closed the file. Footsteps behind him. Commander. He turned. One of the junior researchers, Vec, stood in the hatch. Not shivering, not pale, alert. There's something on the long-range scan. A signal. What kind? I don't know. Not Dominion. It's fragmented. Human register. Voss stepped around him, heading for the signal deck without waiting for permission. He could hear the pulse now. The actual frequency wasn't auditory, but it bled through the hull, bouncing between walls with mechanical cadence. A ping too irregular for beacon markers. It was scanning, searching, closer. Get me the source vector. It's tracking. It's locking to our signal trail. Shortwave band. Voss stared at the static washed output feed until it cleared. No visuals, just text. One line. This is Captain Dern Halveth of the Earth Alliance vessel Resolute. Hold position. We're coming. The heads-up flickered. Voss didn't move. Behind him, someone whispered, "Humans? Out here." He ignored it, eyes still on the screen, not blinking. "Repeat that signal," Voss ordered. It repeated, word for word, steady, confirmed. He didn't smile, just spoke, as if confirming the trajectory of a collapsing star. "Prepare the docking bay. Say it again. Let me hear the waveform one more time," Voss demanded, eyes fixed on the jagged frequency pattern flickering across the auxiliary heads-up interface. "It's consistent," said Vec, fingers racing over the cracked tactile interface. "No degradation, no artifact in the feed. It's human." The words dropped like weight into the frigid air. Dran, still seated near the wall with his knees hugged to his chest, blinked twice and muttered, "That shouldn't be possible. No one charts this region. The trade lanes pull 90 degrees from our coordinate plane." Voss ignored the commentary and stepped toward the uplink station. The central beacon emitter, once used to relay deep space telemetry, now glowed faint amber under low-energy reroute. His breath had long since ceased to steam. It simply dispersed, lost in the thin cold of recycled atmosphere, struggling to simulate life. "Can you isolate the source angle?" Vec didn't answer at first. Instead, he rotated the scan matrix, redirecting long-range sensors from internal diagnostics to directional triangulation. Numbers spilled across the glass panel. Voss watched them update in jittery intervals. Vector path narrowing. Origin sits 2 astronomical units off our aft axis. Closing velocity non-ballistic. They're steering. Voss leaned over the shoulder of the younger Zelthari and stared at the pulsing cursor. "Plot an intercept projection." Urek returned to the bridge from the lower bulkhead corridor, rubbing the edges of his frayed coat sleeve. "We need to verify this isn't a Dominion Pulse spoof. Remember the backscatter mines deployed near Rim Sector?" "They didn't talk like this," Vec said flatly. "Replay the audio." The display window cleared, then text, human standard format, crawled across the console. The voice played again, raw and clipped, traveling through collapsed data packets reformed by the decom filter. This is Captain Dern Halveth of the Earth Alliance vessel Resolute. Hold position. We're coming. Dran's hands twitched as if reacting to a phantom spark. He said we, not I, not a scan. They're on a retrieval vector. No one moved. The idea of movement had become foreign. Then Voss turned to the wall, tapped the manual command sequence into the alloy keypad, and activated local audio. Replay again, in full output. The voice repeated. No errors, no delays. Clarity sharpened with each pass. They had not imagined it. Voss tilted his head slightly, absorbing it. Not as hope, but as a problem to solve. If they're coming, they'll need docking clearances. Atmospheric gradients unregulated since the pressure gate collapsed. We'll have to reroute oxygen manually to seal chamber decks 4 through 6. Give them one corridor to enter. That's if they dock, Urek replied. What if they don't trust the internal connections? Voss turned. Then they'll breach outer hull and pull us out piece by piece. But they're not leaving. They wouldn't have broadcast if they were just observing. Vex stood from the console and walked toward the viewport. The transperium edge had frosted over, but a faint shimmer, too uniform for starlight, blinked between clouds of drifting debris outside. I think I see their running lights. Voss stepped beside him and watched as a dull glint refracted across the distance. No pattern, no pulse, but real. Urek muttered, no vessel gets here by accident, so why them? They answered a signal, Voss said, turning away. That's enough for now. As he moved back toward the command tier, he saw the effect ripple through the deck, not euphoria, but movement. Dran stood and adjusted the thermal wrap on his shoulders. Vec began resetting the bay lighting. Just 2 strips of glow, nothing operational. Even Urek made his way toward the environmental node and started recalculating the airflow cycle for docking pressure. It wasn't rebirth. It was function returning to form. I'll record a reply, Voss said, gesturing for Vec to ready the outbound channel. If they're committing to contact, they'll need confirmation we're alive and not carrying anything dangerous. Dran raised an eyebrow. We're sitting on top of a harmonic frequency emitter with an unknown power signature. If that's not dangerous, I don't know what is. Then we don't mention it, Voss answered. Vec turned, tone neutral but steady. They'll scan the object once they enter proximity. They'll see the energy draw. Then we'll time the signal masking cycle to coincide with their first burst. Stagger the sequence. We've done worse with less. He didn't need their agreement, just their action. Dran approached the secondary console and tapped in a wideband translator. Signal modulated, broadcasting 2-ping interval handshake. The confirmation blinked back. One line. Acknowledged. Rendezvous vector locked. Docking maneuver in T-minus 45 minutes. Voss lowered his eyes, reviewing the text twice. Then, Vec, check thermal regulation in Corridor 7. We'll run them through one vector path only. They shouldn't step anywhere else. And if they do, then we lock down the blast doors and isolate the air pocket. They'll understand containment. The deck shifted beneath them, barely, a gravitational wobble followed by a compensator catch. Subtle. Dran grinned. That's their mass profile hitting proximity buffer. Voss didn't speak. Outside, the Resolute was approaching. The Alliance vessel's hull design was unknown to any of them, but what mattered was that it moved with intention. Purpose had a way of registering in motion. In the operations corner, Urek pressed the vent regulator control, directing remaining heat into the docking concourse. No one asked about the artifact. No one mentioned sabotage. For the first time since the breach, every crew member had direction, and no one hesitated. Voss approached the containment vault and stared at the artifact. It remained as it had been, floating within its field, emitting no light, making no noise. And yet it affected everything, even the arrival of strangers. He tapped the side of the casing once, not out of ritual, just to see if anything changed. It didn't. Lock this room down after I leave, he said over his shoulder. Nobody enters until I authorize it myself. Dran moved to comply. Vec rechecked the approach monitor. Visual confirmation now inbound. I'm reading 30% heat bloom from their side thrusters. They're adjusting to match our spin vector. Voss drew in one long breath that barely cooled inside his chest. Then make ready. Commander, Urek said, his voice steadier than it had been in hours. Do we trust them? Voss didn't answer immediately. He walked back toward the command ring, pulled a handpad from the console, and activated the manual override seal for the access corridor. We trust them enough to let them dock. That's all we need. And after that, we read their faces. Pull the seal and stabilize pressure. If the hatch hisses, back off and let the atmosphere purge. Voss stood poised at the docking control panel, his eyes tracking every icon on the display, like a watchmaker scanning fault lines on glass. Vec adjusted the thermal transfer regulator beside him. Docking lock confirmed. Their outer clamps just latched. Argon exhaled through his nose. Not relief. Calculation. The decompression sequence unfolded with a groan that vibrated through the floor plating. Layers of steel and composite alloy shifting in response to the foreign ship's presence. The entry light bled from orange to green. A tremor passed through the deck, too light to throw balance, but heavy enough to warn. Another vessel was now tethered. Voss turned, walked the short distance to the artifact vault, and keyed in a lock override sequence. The containment unit hissed softly, opening only enough for him to reach inside. He retrieved the spherical capsule, smooth, layered, humming at frequencies his body couldn't register, but his instinct could feel. A piece of forbidden design, a threat to any empire that thrived on control. He tucked it beneath his cloak, his only formal article remaining from Selthari command regulation. Once ceremonial, now functional. He cinched the interior lining tight to keep the capsule from shifting. The docking corridor lights strobed once, signaling readiness. They'll come through now, said Drawn from the comms post. Pressure equalized. Leave the welcome to me, Voss said, pulling his shoulders back and stepping into the narrow airlock hall. The walls were frost-bitten from weeks without regulation, streaked with runoff where melting conduits had bled water down the curved surface. Each footstep echoed as if the corridor itself resented the sound. At the hatch's threshold, a final red indicator blinked out. A hiss followed. Not a rupture, not aggression, just two ships unlocking a border between species. The hatch opened. The figure that stepped through was broader than Voss expected. Human frame, sturdy but measured. No ornamental badges. The man wore a worn navy coat lined with practical fastenings and stripped of pretension. His face, framed by stubble and fatigue, carried a practiced calm, the kind that suggested he'd seen collapse and lived past it. Commander Argon Voss, the human said. Captain Dern Halveth, we received your signal. Voss raised his right hand, forearm flat, palm vertical, standard Zelthari greeting. Halveth returned the gesture awkwardly, fingers extended uncertain, then reached forward and clasped Voss's forearm instead. Hope that wasn't offensive. I read it somewhere. Old contact manual. It's serviceable, Voss replied. Behind Halveth, two more figures emerged. One younger, wiry with scanning equipment strapped to his chest. The other leaner, likely medical support. They held back, eyes cautious, posture ready but non-threatening. Voss motioned inward. This way. We've secured access through Corridor 6. Other sections are unstable. Halveth nodded once and stepped forward. Understood. As they passed deeper into the corridor, the texture of movement changed. The human boots struck the deck with heavier weight. The smell of foreign sterilization agents began to overlay the stale decay of failing life support. Voss noticed how the Earth crew scanned constantly, not just with tools but with eyes, reading surfaces, counting hatches, memorizing every joint in the ship's rib cage. Casualties? Halveth asked. 18 dead. 7 remain, including myself. I've brought enough evac units to carry all of you if need be. Medical triage will prioritize whoever's worst off. Appreciated. Most are in Chamber 9. They've remained near heat retention coils. They reached the operations bay. Vec and Dran looked up as the humans entered. Enviro cores still holding? Halveth asked, not to Voss but to his own man. The younger human stepped forward, tapped twice on the side scanner strapped to his forearm and nodded. No biohazard, no decay gas, air stable within tolerable range. Voss watched the exchange. Efficient. Director. But something sat beneath Halveth's eyes, beneath that outward calm, like a compass needle that knew it was pointing at something forbidden. Do your people know what this mission was? Voss asked. Halveth didn't answer right away. He signaled the medical officer to proceed toward the rear chambers, then glanced over his shoulder before speaking. We know you were a research crew. Your signal didn't say much, but Earth Alliance doesn't need much detail to offer recovery. No? Voss's voice cooled. But your timing is inconvenient. For everyone else. Halveth met his gaze. We didn't come here to interfere in someone else's politics. We came because you were dying. That was enough. Voss didn't respond. Instead, he turned and led Halveth toward the far side of the deck, past the sealed command room, where the artifact chamber remained just meters away. He stopped short of it, placing himself between the human and the door. His voice dropped lower. There's something we retrieved, a device. We don't know who built it, but we know this. It doesn't follow any known power laws. We were studying its harmonic waveforms when the sabotage occurred. Halveth didn't blink. You think your own government targeted you? I know they did. Why keep the object? Because it will matter, whether I die or not. Halveth folded his arms. If you're asking me to protect whatever it is, you should know. If the Dominion Council's watching, they'll follow us the moment we move. Voss's hands shifted to the inside of his cloak, fingers tightening slightly. They already are. A klaxon sounded once from the docking corridor, a soft, descending note indicating pressure shift. One of the Earth crew's handhelds chirped. The younger man ran in. Captain, we've got incoming. Unmarked beacons just pinged off our outer array. 2 vessels, stealth class. Halveth didn't hesitate. Prep full evac. We're leaving now. Voss didn't move. You'll get us out? He asked. Halveth turned, already tapping into his wristband interface. Commander, I didn't bring my crew across half the sector to watch this ship turn into a tomb. Reinforce the hatch. If pressure drops mid-transfer, the rescue becomes a recovery. Roland Veck's boots struck the deck plating with a metallic scrape, the sound cutting sharp through the narrow crawl passage, leading into the lower subdeck of the Talvaran. Unlike the upper command quarters, these chambers hadn't seen light in 3 days. The emergency lumens flickered only in proximity, casting irregular glows across pipe webs and thick cable arteries, twisted like nerves through an old machine's body. He crouched near a cracked inspection port, then slid the panel aside with his shoulder pressed low to brace his own weight. Cold bit instantly across his knuckles. The insulation in his gloves thinned against surfaces like this. Alien alloys with trace elements Earth metallurgy didn't catalog yet. This section runs beneath the main science module, he said aloud, transmitting through his wristband to Halveth up on the Resolute's bridge. Readings show thermal traces, but the configuration's inconsistent with standard reactor redundancy. You're near the artifact vault? Halveth's voice crackled back. 2 chambers down. Raylan tapped his heads-up reader. Running localized scan sweep now. There's something bleeding energy through the subframe. Signal curves are fractal, not sinusoidal. A moment passed. Data streamed across his vision display in tight intervals. He blink-clicked the results and frowned. These conduits were rerouted by hand. No ship AI did this. Whoever sabotaged them used access paths off-network. It wasn't just sabotage, it was covert containment. He moved further along the passage, ducking beneath a coil that oozed a thin trail of luminescent coolant, clear as thawed ice, but with a heat shimmer beneath the surface. It hadn't ruptured. It had been siphoned. Ryland found the first anomaly beneath deck panel 12, a split in the data filament housing. The slice was clean. He extracted a spanner from his toolkit, angled the blade, and pried the casing open. Inside, 3 cores were embedded like misplaced organs, non-standard, irregular in design. One was laced with curved etchings that shimmered when touched. Found something, he muttered, recording the internal structure through micro-drone projection. Not Dominion tech, not Zelthari either. This is alien to both. Define alien, Halveth replied. Pattern coding doesn't loop. It's reactive. Every signal I send through, it replies with variation. It's adapting midstream. That's not processing. That's mimicry. Raylan tapped the core again, slower now. This time the energy signature pulsed in phase with his movement. A mimic signal. Adaptive resonance. He sat back on his heels and looked around the compartment, then noticed the insulation lining the inner wall. thicker than regulation, more thermal padding than the rest of the ship combined. He pressed against the wall. Soft give, then a click. A hidden latch. The panel fell away to reveal a buried access duct. Small, angular, not marked on any structural diagram. You won't believe what I'm seeing. He slipped inside. Inside the hidden vault, the space was bone dry, oddly warm, and filled with trace hums. Not from electricity, but something deeper. Pulse against steel. He crawled forward. Rows of data cells lined the embedded trays along the inner wall, each wrapped in fiber-like tendrils that looked more grown than built. He snapped photos, uploaded diagnostics, and skimmed the oldest core's contents. Partial logs, fragmented comms. One clear line stood out. They activated the harmonic emitter too early. The ship won't make it back. Raylan froze. A second entry. Council clearance overridden. Target is knowledge suppression. Vessel will be lost. He didn't blink, didn't breathe. HFY, confirm encryption. I've uncovered hidden logs stating Council override on this ship's return. Sabotage authorized. He paused, scrolled again. A final command code. Initiate scorched return. The trigger protocol for auto-destruct under loss of mission containment. This wasn't just a kill order, Rollin said. They planned for no survivors, no wreckage, no questions. Can you disable it? But I can trigger a bypass that interrupts the countdown path. If I engage it now, they won't be able to remotely trigger it. Then do it. I'll inform boss. Raylan pulled a fiber-line bypass cord from his satchel, peeled back the shielding on the Mimic core, and inserted the cable directly into the filament notch. The whole vault shifted, barely perceptible, but enough to suggest something inside reacted. The pulsing slowed, then held. Bypass active. He wiped sweat from his forehead. They'll know I triggered it. Won't take long to find us once they scan. I expected as much, HFY replied. Wrap up and prepare for lift. Raylan moved to extract the remaining data cores. One came loose easily. The others clung to the recess as if part of the wall. He focused on the one he held. Black glass surface, etched with shifting contours. It felt warm against his palm, like skin holding old fire. Taking this to Resolute for full scan. If these cores contain structural blueprints of the harmonic emitter, then the Council's been hiding technology that predates both our species by millennia. A quiet vibration passed through the deck, distant, far above. He froze again. HFY, I think we've been pinged. Contact just tripled. It's not one ship. It's 3. Ident tags or Zelthari military. Lieutenant Merrick Vossen's words dropped like a pin in a live warhead. HFY's hand froze mid-command over the weapons terminal on Resolute's bridge. He turned to the tactical feed where 3 crimson outlines cut a formation across the heads-up display, moving like hooked talons toward a soft throat. Designation? Frontal lead is Vengeance class. The other 2 are support tier, all bristling with fire points. They're not here for evac, HFY muttered. Start diagnostics on our shield harmonics. Patch me through to Voss. The bridge light dimmed automatically to tactical readiness as data nodes reprioritized. Heat bloom signatures off the new vessels leaked through the sensor feeds like blood across frost. Below deck, in the medical bay, Voss stood beside one of his wounded crewmen, adjusting a makeshift IV line cobbled together from 2 incompatible systems in a repurposed coolant tube. Dran stood near the entrance, attention split between the biomonitor and the pressure readings overhead. The walls vibrated, low, rhythmic, familiar. That's not a docking pulse, Dran said. Voss glanced toward the corner unit where the diagnostic relay hadn't updated in 2 minutes. That was deliberate, not a system lag, an override. He stepped away from the patient and keyed into the wall panel, bringing up a direct feed from Resolute. HFY appeared, eyes sharp, voice clipped. 3 inbound Zelthari warships, military grade, full active loadouts. Voss didn't ask for proof. He didn't need to. They're not responding to Alliance signals, HFY continued. No hail, no correction pings, and their formation angle matches suppressive posture. Voss rubbed a thumb along the edge of the panel. That class doesn't get deployed without full Council authorization. If they're here, someone high-ordered this. Your crew still aboard? Yes. Voss stepped back, hand already moving to his cloak, confirming the artifact was still secured beneath the lining. And if those ships dock, we're not leaving, not alive. Then we're not waiting. Back on the bridge, Vossen rerouted remaining energy from lateral systems to forward shield lattice. Evac pods are docked and ready, but if they fire before we finish retrieval, they won't get the chance, Halveth cut in. Trigger Faint Maneuver Protocol 6. Draw their scanners. I want false mass signatures scattered across the field. The ship's internal AI kicked into decoy generation. Echo signatures rolled outward. Copies of Resolute blooming on enemy sensors like a field of ghosts. Vossen executed the burst pulse pattern. They're adjusting angle. Main target still locked on us. They know who to hit first. Halveth pulled up a map overlay and toggled a direct relay to Raylan Vec. Status? Vec responded, breath tight. Core vault is prepped. Data extracted. But we tripped a relay. Their long-range array could have flagged our breach. Get it to the main deck. No stops, no explanations. In the medical bay, Voss gave his final orders to Dran and the last two remaining crew members. When the extraction crew arrives, don't question their sequence. Move as told. Stay low. No sudden movement. Dran looked toward the far door. And the artifact? Voss tapped his chest beneath the cloak. With me. It doesn't move without command-level biometric. Alarms lit up along the ceiling, soft amber at first, then full red. The time for ambiguity was done. He stepped to the main corridor and sealed the bulkhead behind him. On the outer edge of the Zelthari formation, the warships accelerated. Their signals remained coded, communication reduced to tactical beacons. A cold form of language that meant only one thing: no survivors. Halveth moved to the helm. They'll fire in under 60 seconds. Vossen, open rear bay. Pull the evac units now. Main grabbers engaged, bringing them in. The ship tilted, vectoring hard away from the lead ship's trajectory, while the false echoes began to bleed apart, programmed to simulate system instability. Redirect power to magneto-tethers, Halveth said. We're not losing anyone mid-transfer. Voss reached the main loading gate just as the chamber hissed open. Rylan emerged with the data cores tucked beneath his arm. His face was streaked with oil and frozen vapor. They're ready to bury this. And us. Voss gestured toward the ship. Then let them chase smoke. Don't drop that core, Raylan said. I drop it. You'll wish the council killed you faster. Back on Resolute, the bridge vibrated as the shield lattice absorbed the first particle scatter. Vossen read the diagnostics. First volley missed wide. They're calibrating. They're testing, Halveth corrected. They know we're not a warship. They're seeing what we'll do. He toggled internal frequency to the artifact containment node. Data secure? Raylan's voice crackled back. Secured, tagged, embedded. You won't like what's inside. I don't need to like it. Halveth tapped the bridge console. I just need them not to have it. Copy. The outer hull began to rattle with kinetic dispersion. Two of the Zelthari ships closed ranks, now moving in flanking arcs. Halveth issued one final command. Engage cloak burst. Prepare for vector jump. Coordinates? Vossen asked. Anywhere but here. Dump the outer ballast and rechannel the residual plasma through Vent 2 Alpha. Now. Captain Dern Halveth didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The command sliced through the bridge like a fuse cut to spark. Vossen's fingers danced over the control keys, triggering the ship's starboard dump ports. The Resolute jolted as a molten coil of expelled plasma ripped backward, sheathing the ship in a wash of blinding ionized vapor. Raylan, standing behind the auxiliary terminal, pulled up radiation field telemetry. The bleed-off will distort every LiDAR sweep within 30 clicks, but we've got 90 seconds, less, before it cools. Halveth angled his posture toward the ops screen. Then we vanish before they reacquire. The Zelthari destroyers, all three now fully engaged, split formation in response to the sudden energy spike. Their movement wasn't chaotic, but it wasn't cohesive either. Military doctrine prioritized containment, not anticipation. That gave Halveth his opening. Deploy the sensor ghosts, he said, tapping the manual input. 4 decoy drones jettisoned in staggered intervals, each programmed with a randomized echo pattern and engine mimic script. They spun outward, transmitting simulated trajectories, one arcing toward the belt's outer rim, another diving into the lower distortion cloud, 2 more cutting mid-axis in divergent escape vectors. Volson watched the radar bloom with synthetic noise. They're buying it, splitting pursuit. No celebration yet. Halveth's voice stayed level. Redirect all non-critical systems to sublight engines. We cut through that radiation shelf before the drones burn out. The Resolute banked hard into the gravity distortion field, a swirling cloud of magnetized debris and compressed gas hanging between a broken planetoid cluster and the remains of an ancient mining drift. The belt wasn't mapped. It wasn't supposed to be navigable. Raylan strapped into the lateral brace. "This is barely flying, sir. It's threading a needle while the needle's on fire." Halveth cracked a wry glance but didn't answer. His grip locked on the command chair. The hull creaked as the first edge of the radiation field struck the forward shielding array. Particles hissed against the energy skin, dispersing in chaotic spirals. "Set our core emissions to echo refracted pulse only. If they're scanning for residual heat trail, we give them noise." Vossen rerouted output manually, choking the vessel's thermal footprint to a sliver. The visual field through the primary viewport darkened as the internal optics filtered the radiation glow into readable contrast. The view ahead boiled. Shards of rock rotated unevenly through the distortion belt, spinning along arcs no navigation system was designed to calculate. Halveth squinted, reading movement like one might read battlefield wind. He saw the gaps before the system did. "Turn port 17 degrees. Give me a whip through that fracture before it closes." The ship knifed left, riding the wake of a drifting mass barely wider than the hull. For 3 seconds, gravity inverted. The deck seemed to twist. Everyone held fast. Then it stabilized. Below deck, Voss gripped the overhead pipe of the evac hold, the artifact strapped tight across his chest. Raylan's voice crackled over the relay. "We're through the first wave. Second one's tighter. They'll know soon." Voss responded only with a breath. His eyes tracked the pulse indicator on the artifact's case. Stable. For now. If that changed mid-jump, they'd all feel it. "Status of their scanners?" Halveth asked. "They're pinging wide. Pulsy spread's gone erratic. Must be the plasma cloud." "Then give them more chaos." Raylan tapped into the aft array, rerouting one of the malfunctioning maintenance bots to detonate its battery core. He ejected it mid-drift, timed so it would flare just as a Zelthari vessel came into range. The flash painted the field with electromagnetic flare, saturating the grid. "Their forward ship just reversed scan polarity," Vossen called. "They're blind for 6 seconds minimum." "Vector us out now," Halveth snapped. "Push everything we've got." The Resolute surged forward. Bulkheads groaned. The light dimmed as reactor draw hit maximum. Trajectory. Clearing field in 4, 3. Halveth watched the edge of the distortion belt thin to a band of blue. "Now!" The ship burst free of the field's edge, trailing static and superheated air, emerging into cold blackness just beyond the reach of the nearest gas giant's magnetic crest. But their freedom was temporary. "New contact, rear quadrant," Vossen reported. "One destroyer got through. It's following our exact burn trail." Raylan didn't curse. He didn't need to. "That means they filtered the plasma." Halveth toggled the emergency maneuver suite. "Then we use the gravity well. Set course for the crescent edge of the gas giant. I want a deceleration loop around the arc. If they follow that curve, the mass pull will force them to overcorrect. And us? We'll ride the slingshot. No guarantees we survive that." Survival was off the table the moment they opened fire. The ship dove toward the planet's edge. Below, the surface roiled with storms the size of continents, their spiral patterns lit by static and lightless fire. Halveth eyed the trailing indicator. The enemy vessel adjusted speed, cutting angle to compensate. "They're baiting us, trying to match speed while reading for engine strain," Vossen noted. "They won't like what happens next." At full burn, Resolute cut across the outer ridge of the gravitational envelope. Inertia bent the ship's path. The compensator screamed through the bulkhead. "Now!" Halveth yelled. Vossen vented core coolant along the ship's rear flank, a blast of vapor and ionized residue. The sudden change in mass profile jerked the ship mid-flight. The enemy tracker, locked on the prior signature, overshot. "They lost us." "Mark jump point," Halveth commanded. "Coordinates locked. Distance 6,000 kilometers." "Execute." The stars bent as the jump drive activated. The Resolute vanished. Shut the external locks. No transmissions in or out unless I personally authorize it. Captain Halveth issued the command before his boots had even cooled on the reinforced decking of Outpost 9. The corridor lights blinked in sequence, verifying his biometric override. This outpost didn't belong on any Dominion registry. It wasn't built for welcome banners. It was built to hold conversations the galaxy would punish if overheard. Raylan handed off the artifact's transport case to an awaiting research technician. No scans until I confirm shielding alignment. It's still radiating trace harmonics. Could interfere with nearby guidance channels. The lead scientist on site, a grizzled man named Commander Thornjekyll, gave a sharp nod and gestured for the data vault. Room 4. Level B. Decryption suites prepped. But if this thing's wired like you said, one wrong trigger and we scramble our own memory banks. I've already seen what it does to alien subsystems, Raylan replied, and I'm not eager to watch it improvise on ours. The corridor narrowed into a containment airlock, standard for bioenergetic anomalies. Inside, Argon Voss waited, arms folded beneath the drape of his cloak. His posture never slouched. His breathing never changed. He watched everyone with the patience of a man who'd already died once. Halveth entered and took a seat opposite him. No handshakes, no welcome. Just a shared table and air recycled through ion-fed filters. Talk. Voss tapped the table twice, triggering the integrated heads-up display. A series of waveform patterns surfaced. Three-dimensional, color-mapped, tagged with notations in layered glyphs. Unaligned formats, some in Zelthari, others in dialects known only to historians. Halveth studied the waveform density. What am I looking at? Proof that the harmonic emitter we recovered wasn't just an energy artifact. It's a fragment of a system the Council's been erasing from public record for generations. Not destroying, hiding. Why? Halveth asked. Because it doesn't need singularity power. It operates on subspace harmonics alone. Self-sustaining, modular, efficient. If this tech went public, every Council dependency falls. Fuel monopolies collapse. Trade routes become irrelevant. Territory control, meaningless. And your people tried to kill you to keep it buried. Voss didn't flinch. They failed. Halveth leaned forward. Why come to us? Because Earth isn't bound by the founding treaties. You're new, still underestimated. The Council thinks you're reactive, unpredictable. That's an advantage no one else has anymore. You want an alliance. I want survival. Voss's eyes narrowed. And leverage. The room chilled. Not from temperature, from clarity. Raylan entered with 2 data cores. We cracked one. It's not just engineering schematics. There are coordinates, locations buried in deep subspace, not charted on any modern star map. Halveth took the core, weighed it. You're telling me this isn't just one device. It's one of many, Raylan said. And worse, each may be part of a lattice network. If we find enough, we don't just have power, we have something closer to control. A moment passed. Then Halveth turned to Voss. How many others in your species would back this? Voss answered without pause. Not the politicians, not the financiers, but the thinkers, the ones bound by curiosity rather than chain treaties? Enough. Will they fight for it? They're already dying for it. Thornjekyll entered, holding a plasma-bound readout. We've begun translation. This artifact holds active command protocols that override Dominion military encryption. You're holding not just forbidden technology, you're holding their original framework. Halveth stood. That's not information. That's leverage. Jackal narrowed his eyes. Which makes us a target the moment this data leaks. Voss tapped the table again. A third waveform unfurled. This one encrypted but labeled. Protocol 9. What's this? Raylan asked. Voss looked directly at Halveth. Contingency. If any race outside the Council discovers harmonic lattice schematics, Protocol 9 activates. Dominion Charter mandates immediate system-wide containment. Containment, Raylan repeated. Or extermination. They don't distinguish. Halveth set the core on the table, exhaled once through his nose, and spoke slowly. So if we use this tech, we spark a war. No, Voss corrected. You spark freedom. The war already started. You just weren't invited. Jekyll stepped between them. We'll need layered obfuscation, relay nodes across independent systems, proxy research hubs. Nothing can trace this to Earth. Halveth nodded. I want compartmentalized progress. Medical, agricultural, propulsion. Split the discoveries across species already oppressed. Make it look like evolution, not revolution. Voss almost smiled. Deception through advancement. Very human. Survival through misdirection, Halveth corrected. A warning tone chimed softly. High orbit detection sweep active. Jekyll read the telemetry. Recon drone, not ours, they're sniffing. We triggered a proximity flag. Raylan turned to Halveth. Do we hold or scatter? Halveth's response was immediate. We don't run. We embed. Start contacting the species Voss mentioned. Quietly, form a relay circle. From this moment forward, Earth is no longer observing. Voss's final words cut through the chamber like a data pulse. Then you'll need a new doctrine. Transmit Node 7. If we're jammed, route through Orvac's relay. But it leaves this table within the hour. Captain Halveth's voice carried across the tactical operations chamber at Outpost 9. Not raised, not emotional, just timed like a blade drawn across stone. The others around him responded with minimal motion, their concentration stitched into calibrated execution. Voss stood across from him, gaze fixed on the data spool unraveling across the heads-up display. The node's pulse rhythm traced Earth's first signal drop, a surgical rewrite of autoimmune targeting algorithms. Broadcast not to fleets, but to underground biolabs in the Charn Wastes, where the Fraxian species had been dying from a council-modified genetic limit placed on their regenerative processes. Raylan keyed in the echo routing mask. Encrypted, packeted, and buried in trade traffic between civilian archives. If someone's watching, they'll see a software update for agricultural drones. Good, Halveth said. We offer cure before we offer cause. Voss's fingers traced the symbol they had designed together, a convergence of intersecting paths beneath a shadowed ring. Not a crest, not a flag. A sigil for those who moved in data, not battalions. You're sure the Fraxians will respond? Halveth asked. They already have. Voss gestured toward a second stream initializing on the opposite console. Encrypted feedback returned from their deep colony. One of their planetary healers reported full neural stability restored in 6 patients. They know we didn't just send help. We sent change. Raylan exhaled softly and leaned over the console. And if they talk? They won't, Voss replied. Fraxians bury loyalty deeper than they're dead. Elsewhere, in the sulfur-wrapped tunnels of the Kovan Range, the data arrived in a plain, nondescript pulse. The Nor Collective had long been kept in orbital servitude, their industrial class forbidden access to autonomous machinery. But now, a tech priest named Tovek Lar watched as his system loaded a schematics update. Not a schematic. A door, embedded deep in the code, layered beneath a self-cleaning diagnostic, sat the layout of a pulse lattice forge. Compact, silent, repeatable. Tovek's eyes widened. He didn't speak. He simply duplicated the file to 4 disconnected crystal cubes and began distributing them during morning maintenance shift. Rebellion didn't need banners. It needed instructions. On Outpost 9, a second transmission fired. This one toward the Tyani Republic, a culture whose entire spaceflight program had been forcibly relocated to Council-approved orbits. They're expecting medical? Raylan asked, raising an eyebrow. No, Halveth answered. We gave them architectural AI embedded with anti-crash loop subroutines. Their Council-licensed ships are programmed to fail if they exceed orbital distance. We just showed them how to bypass the leash. Voss adjusted the feed. They'll have their first planetary lift within 30 days. Quiet, unlogged, just a routine survey flight. And if the Council notices the drift, they'll blame technician error, Voss said, until it happens twice. The lights in the command room dimmed momentarily as outbound traffic spiked. Jackal monitored internal load distribution. These new encryption bursts, they're going to draw suspicion. Pattern variation alone is enough for signal tracing. Then we give them patterns, Halveth replied. Misdirection routed through known sympathizers. Each species receives a packet customized to their complaint. No duplicates. No overlap. Raylan nodded. One per code, one per grievance. Voss tapped another node to life. We're not fighting with weapons. We're undoing dependency, piece by piece. The third knowledge drop targeted the Shivari colonies, specifically their nutrient conversion towers. The Council's distribution programs ensured population control by issuing faulty biocalibrators that slowed metabolism rates. Earth's correction file rewrote the governor's sequence. Within 2 weeks, entire districts would stop needing ration shipments. No speeches, just fewer starving children. Who's next? Raylan asked. Voss crossed the room, stopping by a compact navigation hub showing species migration zones. The Yarn Dominion. Their scholars were barred from publishing anything involving faster-than-light micro-jump modeling. They've got no idea their research was 5 iterations ahead of Dominion standards. Halveth activated the translation scrubber. Then we send the updated formula, layer it beneath a physics paper in a public academic stream, mark it as a corrected thesis, and they'll ingest it without blinking. Jackal cracked a rare smile. They'll build a prototype before the council even reads the submission. The rhythm of rebellion spread like pressure fractures, small at first but growing. Each broadcast ignited a different sector. No open battle, no declaration, just whispered files, rewritten systems, bypassed restrictions. The old model of revolution crumbled. There was no central fleet, no capital assault. There was substitution. Voss entered the artifact vault alone. Inside, the device still thrummed. Not louder, not brighter, but deeper. Every new signal they sent amplified its echo. The lattice was connecting. 5 confirmed links, Raylan reported, joining him at the vault. Each receiving party transmitted new pulse frequencies after implementing changes. It's working. This isn't just rebellion, Voss said. It's feedback. The lattice is alive again. Halveth appeared at the door, watching the shifting core. And the council? He asked. They're scanning, Voss said, but they're watching for attacks, not answers. Halveth turned toward the table, triggered a new command channel. Let's give them something to be confused about. Seal the last node. If they haven't joined by now, they won't. Captain Dern Halveth's words marked the end of transmission. No second offer, no delayed promise. The table of command officers around him nodded once. All knew what it meant. The broadcast had gone galaxy-wide. The council had been warned. The alliances were real, and now there was no going back. The chamber lights dimmed automatically to limit external emissions. In the middle of the war room at Outpost 9, a compact heads-up display projected the final pulse map. Systems once loyal to the Dominion Council, now glowing in the new tri-symbol of the Accord. Not a rebellion, not an invasion, a decision. On the edge of the command floor, Argon Vos stood beside the observation port, his cloak folded over one arm. He watched the incoming flight data scroll silently. Ships were converging. Civilian, scientific, even ex-military vessels. Unarmed, unified. You think they'll fire first? Raylan asked, his voice quiet. They always do, Voss replied, eyes fixed on the screen. But this time, they'd be firing into a mirror. There's nothing left to suppress. The secrets are out. Halveth turned toward the table. What's their response protocol? Jackal, cross-checking Dominion fleet movements, didn't blink. Containment threat followed by withdrawal. No fleet movement. They've lost consensus. The founding races are divided. Half want to negotiate. The other half are waiting for someone else to act first. They're paralyzed, Raylan said. Their own architecture turned against them. Voss turned to face them all. That was always the flaw. They built walls too high to see their foundations cracking. Now they're afraid of what's already beneath them. Halveth activated the central interface. Then this is how it ends. Not with conquest, not with surrender, but with irrelevance. He tapped a final command. The artifact's core frequency, translated into open broadcast harmonics, initiated its last sequence. Every species in the Accord would now have full, untethered access to the original harmonic lattice. The Council no longer held exclusive control over energy, travel, or communication. Voss nodded once. They'll know we've distributed it, They already do, Halveth said, and they can't undo it. The moment passed. No fanfare, no cheer, just progress. In orbit, the first ships entered formation. 36 vessels from 16 species. No weapons raised. They moved not in rank, but in rhythm, anchored by drive signatures calibrated to the harmonized frequency. It was the new symbol of cooperation, not built by treaty, but by common defiance. Inside Outpost 9, the crew observed in silence. Jekyll stood with arms behind his back, nodding as the scanners confirmed each arrival. No war drums, no fleet banners, he muttered. This is going to confuse the hell out of them. Halveth crossed his arms. Good. Confusion's safer than open fire. Raylan smirked. How long before they realize we don't need to fire at all? Voss answered without turning. They already have. That's why they're quiet. They're watching the galaxy walk past them. Halveth stepped beside him. And you, Commander Voss? What will you do now that your mission is complete? Voss lifted the cloak, revealing the artifact. No longer pulsing with unknown power, but inert. Complete. Its function had passed to others. I was a scientist once, he said, voice level. Now I'll teach. That's all there's left to do. Make sure no one forgets how it was stolen from us in the first place. You won't be alone in that. No, Voss replied. That's the difference now. None of us are. 3 days later, the Dominion Council held its emergency summit. The chambers, once echoing with law and proclamation, now stood sparse, scattered with nervous delegates and hollowed titles. The High Chancellor, robe wrinkled and voice flat, announced a temporary freeze on all outer system enforcement orders. The official statement was clinical. A period of galactic recalibration is in progress. The unofficial truth? They had been outmaneuvered without a single weapon fired. Back on Outpost 9, Halveth stood in the observation deck, alone. Below, the hangar brimmed with activity. Tiny engineers shared notes with neurometallurgists. Fraxian biologists loaded samples into Terran labs. There were no uniforms, no generals. Just men building what had been denied them for generations. He glanced up as footsteps approached. Voss joined him at the window. No parades, Halveth asked. Voss shrugged. This wasn't a victory, it was a correction. They stood quietly for a while. No need to speak. And then Halveth added, 5 years ago, Earth wasn't on the Council's map. Now we've redrawn the borderlines. Voss smiled faintly. And all because one Terran captain answered a broken voice across a forgotten frequency. Halveth nodded once. You weren't just left to die out there, Commander. You were left to be erased. And Earth disrupted that erasure, Voss said. Not with fire, but with memory. They stood side by side as more ships arrived. Quiet patterns forming across space. No bluster, just undeniable unity. The artifact no longer glowed. It didn't need to. The message had already spread. And across dozens of systems, billions began to remember. Someone came when no one else would.